Okay, we're live.
All right. Hello, everyone. We are so glad to have you here tonight. This is Tammy Owens here with the Michael Chapel's Innocent Project, one of the many chapel warriors, and we are so glad to have you with us here tonight. I've got Henry Ball, author of the book Michael Chapel, as well as Sean Kipe, the famous podcaster, host, creator of In the Land of Lies. And we are going to have a good time tonight answering questions regarding the habeas filing and get some explanation as to what that is, what it means, and what happens next. We will, if we have time later, go into some additional questions, but for now, that's what we're going to be discussing. If you do have a question, feel free to just post it in the comments, and I will be looking as we talk here and try to get those in for our hosts. So welcome, guys. Glad to have you here.
Well, thank you. Good to be here. Sean, good to be with you.
Yeah, I didn't know if that was to us or people coming in. Hey, everybody.
Hello.
Well, so what I want to do is, first of all, say what a week we had last week. That was just bam, 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 one thing after another. And finally, it's like the ball is rolling. We have some excitement, lots of legal activity going on. So explain to us what a habeas filing is to begin with.
So, when you have a conviction, the defendant or the convicted person has a right to a direct appeal. It's called post-conviction motion. So anything that they do post-conviction with appeals or motions for DNA testing, things of that nature, or it's all part of the post-conviction process. In Mike's case, he has been through his direct appeals process. He's also been through the habeas process, including federal habeas. But we have, with new information, we've had the ability to go and file what's called a successive habeas, which essentially is just like an appeal, but it's a petition for writ of habeas corpus. It's the defendant saying, my rights are being violated in this way or that way, and it essentially deals with constitutional violations. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about some of those, but constitutional violations like Brady violations or prosecutorial misconduct, things of that nature. So a habeas is essentially an appeal, but it's a specific type of appeal with specific information and specific criteria that had to be met.
Okay. Can you explain to us what's actually in Mike's habeas filing? What are some of the things that y'all brought to their attention that he was mistreated?
Well, so if many of the people listening, and Sean, I don't want to steal the show here, but if people are listening, I would imagine they have also listened to In the Land of Lies. And Sean did a really good job of bringing forward some information that, has really not been, has never been reviewed by a court or seen by the jury. One big piece of that information is the dispatch tape that we talked about. Sean was able to file an open records request directly to the current district attorney, and lo and behold, she provided us that dispatch tape, and it seems to corroborate what Michael Chapel has said all along. And then, as I wrote in my post this morning, there's been an ever-changing story as to why that tape was never heard by the jury. And I think the changing answers really kind of lead to the conclusion that it was suppressed evidence, and that is in fact a Brady violation. So that's one big thing. There's several others.
Can I address that one too, real quick? Recently we saw the post in there where Savannah Levins actually interviewed Danny Porter, the DA of Gwinnett at the time. And she, of course, asked him that question, did you suppress the evidence? And I think he kind of hung himself with his answers when he was saying that it was a strategic decision, I guess, and that it was not his responsibility to hand it to the defense himself. Don't you think he kind of buried himself right there?
Sean?
Henry, you got pretty strong feelings on that, so I'll let you
Well,
take that.
I certainly do, and yeah, he did bury himself, and in fact, he did two things. He said, well, it was a strategic trial decision. It was my decision.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't. Well, I made it available to them, and they didn't put it into evidence. He kind of said that later. He said it's not my responsibility to put it into evidence. But it is his responsibility to provide any potentially exculpatory information to the defense. And as he went on further to say to the Gwinnett Daily Post, he's not so sure that that information was provided to the defense because, in fact, it wasn't provided to the defense. And, as I said this morning in this morning's post, the ever-changing story, he told Tom Conroy that it had been that it no longer existed. He told Pamela Holcomb that, well, maybe that wasn't Mike's voice. He told Savannah Levins that it was a strategic trial decision. He told Jim Harris at the Southern Voice that, well, we recorded that on a separate audio cassette and made it available to the jury if they wanted to hear it. Well, all you got to do is look at the trial transcript and look at the exhibit list, and the only recorded cassette is the 911 call.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, the story has just changed so many times. But here's the thing. None of those stories are sufficient. None of those stories are adequate. Every one of those stories leads to the same place: prosecutorial misconduct, Brady violation, in my humble opinion.
Mm-hmm. Sean, you have anything to add to that or want to go through some additional ones?
No, I think, Danny Porter, if you listen to the podcast, I gave him, and at that point that I spoke to him, I had not made up my mind yet and didn't for some time, whether I really felt Mike was innocent or not. And so I was interested to hear what he had to say, because he was so confident in every document that I've read and every interview that I've ever seen with him. He's so confident that he did the right thing, that he knew what he was doing, and that Mike was guilty. Mm-hmm. And, again, if you heard the podcast, you heard his responses to me, and it was just, the famous line that Henry and I have joked about for so long now is, the jury, that was reconciled somehow. Mm-hmm. Everything that appeared to make Mike look innocent to anyone who has, any sense of, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but just common sense.
Common sense.
And for him to look at all this, evidence that was withheld, or all the shady things that happened in this story. There's too many. You guys know that at this point. And for him to say, well, it was reconciled. I think he hung himself when he said that.
Yes.
In my humble opinion. And I think it's only gotten worse since. And I think he, Henry and I talked about this recently. He's sort of doubled down every time that he's, with the 11 Alive interviews and Southern Voice and all these other people that have interviewed him now. He's sort of he has no choice but to double down on what he's kind of said all along, even though things really that have been presented and have been discovered since Henry's picked up this investigation, since I started the podcast. You can't argue with some of this stuff. It's in black and white. It's evidence, the pistol being, considered to be the murder weapon, but was never disclosed. Mm-hmm.
Because you couldn't
Dispatch.
tie it to Mike.
Yeah, because you couldn't tie it to Mike. The dispatch tape, all this, the interviews with people that said, yeah, no, I was there. He was at the firehouse. Poor Danny at this point,
Yeah. So finally, those are some of the things that we uncovered. Another thing that Sean and I dealt with in the podcast, but since the podcast has become even stronger, in fact, I think you heard Sean in I think the last episode say that we had spent a lot of time trying to reconnect with Tukey, based on the things that Tukey had told us. And it took some digging. To be honest with you, I think we were out of contact with him for almost 2 years. And I can't really disclose how we found him, but we found him. And he's a great guy. He's a very nice guy. He very much wants to do the right thing, but like a lot of other people connected to this case, he's got some concerns. And so it took a little while kind of, making him comfortable. But he finally did provide his full statement. And his full statement is essentially that he saw JP Morgan pull the trigger. He followed JP Morgan. He stayed some distance behind. He was about 60 yards away in the pouring rain. And the figure that he knew to be JP Morgan pointed at the figure that he knew to be Imogene Thompson. He saw a muzzle flash. He heard a gunshot, and she fell to the ground. And what's funny, and it goes back to what we talked about in the podcast, I would ask him certain things that aren't on the record, certain things that aren't part of this is how Danny Porter said this crime occurred, and this is how they convicted Mike of this crime. They said Imogene Thompson died in her vehicle of two 38 caliber gunshot wounds to the head. But that's not quite what
evidence shows.
And it's not what the evidence shows, but what the evidence shows lines up with what Tukey saw.
Right, he's credible.
His story is very credible. And it goes back to one of the things that Sean covered. He mentioned, and I think I said in the podcast, that he pinpoint nailed the room that Imogene Thompson was in that night. The clip that Sean played when I said that, I also said the second or third door. So it kind of sounds like it's a little ambiguous. But what Sean didn't play, because you only have so much time, is that the day after he told me it was either the second or third door, I went to the American Inn, took a panoramic shot, and sent it to Tukey. And Tukey said, where that van is 2 doors down, that's the door she was in. And that's the door that's in the record that Jack Burnett wrote in his case notebook. And so the guy knows things that he could not know if he was not where he said he was. And ultimately, he said he saw John Philip Morgan pull the trigger and murder Imogene Thompson at the Gwencoe Muffler Shop on April 15th, 1993.
Do you know why Imogene was at the muffler shop or not the muffler shop, but the American Inn?
So what Tukey said is that she was essentially trying to get away from her son. Now, in our investigation, another thing that we found out, there's another name that's in Jack Burnett's notes that's in the room next to Imogene Thompson. And we actually tracked him down and contacted this guy. He's from out of state, never lived here. He just happened to be on business and stayed at that hotel that night. And what he related to us is that somebody was banging on his door, trying to get into his door. Now, keep in mind, this is the room next to Imogene Thompson. And ultimately threw a rock through his window. He made them move him to another room. And he was there when the police arrived, and Imogene Thompson and everybody was there. He didn't know any of the people involved. He just knew that somebody threw a rock through his window, and he made the office relocate him. What's interesting is around that same time, and she doesn't describe it the same way as Ron Flashner describes the smoking sedan, but she said that a big, ugly, clacking car came into the hotel around that time period. She couldn't describe it any more than that, but could that be the same car that was seen at 10 o'clock at the muffler shop, emanating so much engine smoke that uniquely matched Michael Thompson? And could it have been Michael Thompson banging on the door and throwing a rock through the window, thinking that that was the room Imogene Thompson was in? Who knows?
Right.
But he says she was there to get away from her son with that money.
Right. So basically, we can trust his statement that he's given, and through all types of threats and pressure and blackmailing, he's been kind of held back. But thankfully, he has given us the word now. And another one who's come forward with another affidavit, of course, is the female police officer. Can you kind of explain that one?
I feel like I'm taking all the airtime, Sean. I apologize.
Hey, I'm just throwing it out there. Whoever wants to grab it.
No, it's good, man.
Yeah. So we call her Maria. That is, to me, that is so interesting, and I couldn't believe it when I was hearing it. So Maria worked at GCPD. She was a police officer, and about, I don't know, a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, she sends me a private message and says, we need to talk. I need to tell you my Michael Chappell story. And I'm like, okay. And so we talked the next day, and she really told me her story. She told me her life story, and she hadn't gotten anywhere near Michael Chappell, but she was telling me how she came to be at GCPD, how she got into law enforcement, you know, kind of giving me all of the background on her. And then she says, so on May 9th, 1993, which is the day before, ironically, J.P. Morgan committed suicide, another officer at GCPD attempted to sexually assault her. Now, it didn't go all the way. It didn't go too far. It stopped. She pushed him back. There was a call that came into them, and she was able to stop, you know, what was occurring. And then she confided in another officer. That officer essentially said, you have to take this to the brass. And so she did. And she initially was told by the brass, you know, that they were going to support her, that they were going to be very supportive. But they told her, but go ahead and take some time off, you know, to gather yourself, to collect yourself or whatever. And they had her park her squad car behind GCPD headquarters in the secured lot. Now, keep in mind, this is May 9th. So this is after Mike's car has been moved from the front of the front of the headquarters to the secured lot, and she parked next to Michael Chappell's car, the patrol car that she knew to be Michael Chappell's. Fast forward through the investigation into the sexual assault, and I can tell you two things. She was also a victim of the Gwinnett County Railroad. I have all of the post records. I have all of the investigative records of her case, and they absolutely supported the male officer. He, in fact, the questions that they asked him for the lie detector weren't even questions related to her allegations. And then her attorney demanded that the GBI conduct the lie detector test. And so she took and passed a GBI lie detector test, and he refused to take one. Yet GCPD still said, well, you know, she was deceptive, she wanted it, whatever. and they allowed her to resign rather than terminate her, but she was sexually assaulted and they terminated her.
Mm-hmm.
While all this investigation is occurring, of course, GCPD is embroiled in the Michael Chappell investigation. Okay. And on May 19th, she is summoned to headquarters to come and talk to Chief Wayne Bolden. And she gets there, and by this time, she already knows she's being railroaded. She knows, it's a done deal. So she pulls into the secured lot in her personal car. She has a couple of big boxes in her car that she loads everything out of her patrol car into these boxes. She didn't really go through anything. She just threw everything into the boxes, put the boxes in her personal car and parked, and then went in to talk to Wayne Bolden, had that conversation. She was told to wait outside. They didn't even want her in the headquarters at that point. Told her to wait outside for her captain to come and get her keys and, have a final conversation with her or whatever. And so she goes and stands behind the special operations trailer, which happened to be the office of one Mike Rionis. And as she's standing there, she hears Mike Rionis, John Laddie, and Steve Klein discussing the Michael Chappell case and how they need to get their story straight to make it stick. And I know she's watching right now, and I apologize, Aaron of Chapel, for even having to bring this up, but it shows just how desperate GCPD was, and it shows just how, I don't even know what the word, I think the word she would use is evil. But one of the things that Maria heard was they said, well, his wife, she's a Hooters girl, so let's just call her a prostitute. So one of the things, and that's one of the rumors that spread around Beaufort, about Aaron Chappell, and that's where it emanated. It emanated from Mike Rionis, John Laddie, and Steve Klein. So she's standing there listening to this conversation. A few minutes into it, Captain, I think it's Captain Kissel, and the sergeant that was actually conducting the sexual assault investigation comes storming out of the headquarters, walked past her, kind of giving her the evil eye, and walked up to the group that was standing there and said, do y'all realize there's an officer right here listening to your conversation? So the next thing she knows, all five of these angry men are asking her, what did you hear? What are you going to say? She handed her keys to the captain and bolted, got in her car and left. Now, a few days later, Steve Klein and Captain Kissel showed up at her personal house, knocking on the door. Hey, do you happen to have any files that don't belong to you? Do you happen to have any, like a ticket book or anything that's not yours, maybe? When you cleaned out your car? And she's like, get off my property. No, go away. And they kept asking her, and she basically closed the door, sent them on their way, and said she didn't know what they were talking about. At that point, she didn't know what they were talking about. But that weekend, she went into the boxes, and one of the things that she had taken out of her trunk was a black bag, and she opened that bag, and it was full of files. It had a ticket book. It had some micro cassettes, a couple of film canisters, a lot of the things that were missing from Michael Chappell's patrol car. And she started going through them, and lo and behold, it was all of Michael Chappell's files. It was Michael Chappell's investigative files. So how did those files get into Officer Maria's trunk?
Good question, isn't it?
Yes, it is a good question. And here's the thing, and this is just my conspiracy theory. This is just me. But they were taking the time to go through those files, to scrub them of any incriminating information. And let me give you one more little bullet point on that. all of you will remember the famous line by Steve Klein that, I put some film and a couple of other items in a bag and lost them from the precinct to the headquarters, 8.5 miles. Well, how did you lose them? Well, just due to human error. So he lost these files due to human error. But here's the thing. He said some film that was on April 24th, 1993. On May 14th, 1993, Jack Burnett wrote in his logbook, need to process the film found in Mike's patrol car. Mm-hmm. Now, the files were then found on the 19th in Maria's car. So they were already scrubbing the files, but they didn't expect her car to go back in service, and they didn't expect her to clean her car out. She did. They lost control of those files, and Steve Klein had to say, well, I lost them due to human error. And that explains what happened to that container full of files and film and micro cassettes that was in Mike's trunk that we see the picture of the empty container.
Hey, Sean, this is not directly related to the habeas, but in your investigative work, he's just talking about scrubbing files. There's a good question asked about when J.P. Morgan committed suicide. We know he was having dinner with his family, went upstairs, his wife hears him typing, and then, of course, he commits suicide. Following that, you have all of the upper brass from the department come and scrub the computers clean through that whole process and whatnot, getting rid of evidence.
That small detail, scrubbing the computer.
Yeah. Do you have any idea, has anybody come forward to say, of course, we think that was a suicide note of some sort, I'm thinking, but do you have anything to back that up?
To back up whether it was a suicide note or not?
Or if anyone knows what was on that note?
I mean, I don't think we know that anybody for sure knows what was on that other than Bodie Hearst. I would have to imagine, who's the one that actually scrubbed it and destroyed the hard drives. I can only imagine that there's somebody else, whether he was instructed to destroy the hard drives, directed to do that, or if it was, I'll go in and see what I can find and did it himself. I don't think anybody knows that. Okay. Henry, you might know more about that than me, but I don't think.
Well, I think you're right.
Was that they were destroyed.
Yeah, nobody knows for sure, but I will tell you this. Dennis Miller, who was the first lead investigator for the defense, spoke to J.P. Morgan's wife back in the day, I think sometime before the trial, and she believed that there was a suicide note that was destroyed. There is no definitive, she had no way of knowing it, but she told him that she believed he had left a suicide note and that it was among the things destroyed. It's just a belief from my understanding. But I do think it's significant that his wife felt that way.
Yeah, I'll just say one other thing. I think that, when Henry actually spoke with Bodie Hearst's attorney at one point, asked him if there was a saved copy of that, those hard drives or, whatever was on those hard drives, or there was a safe, in a safe deposit box or something, and no comment was the response that he got. So, while there's not proof that exists and that somebody knows what was on it, that's still alive and still around, I think that, if you ask an attorney that, or you ask anybody that, and no comment. And I was actually having the discussion today with Henry on something unrelated, but I said, when you say no comment, that just means I don't want to answer you because
I'm pleading the fifth.
Because I don't want you to know what I have to say.
Yeah.
So, use that information how you will.
Yeah. So, the big question is what happens now? What is the process that the habeas filing goes through?
Well, I mean, Henry, you're dialed in with that too. But I mean, you've been certainly dealing with Mike's attorneys more than I.
So you and I were talking about this, Sean. There's a multitude of things that could happen, and I do want to stress that the habeas is the most important vehicle that we kind of have on the track right now, but it's not the only track, and there's a lot of different things that could happen. But specifically through the habeas, there will be a preliminary hearing to determine if we go to a full habeas hearing. The full habeas hearing would essentially be a trial, in that we would put on evidence, we would have witnesses, cross-examination, all of that. It would not be in front of a jury. It would still be in front of the assigned judge for the habeas. But that is what we want. We want to be able to make our case. Mike wants his day in court. That said, there is a possibility that the state will not prosecute, if you will. The state might look at their position in light of all of this evidence and say, we don't really have anything. We don't really have anything to prosecute here or to defend here. So that could happen. If we go to the full trial, then a judge has a few options. He may say, as the previous 16 post convictions, they, threw him out on some technicality. I don't see that happening here because I think Billy, Rennie, and Rosenberg has done a fabulous job, and I think they've really dotted their I's and crossed their T's. We're more narrowly focused on the things that we brought into the habeas, and we've got one other, which we might talk about here in a second, but one other kind of silver bullet with the habeas. But essentially, a judge could throw it out. Don't think that's going to happen. They could also say, okay, we believe you made your case, and we're going to vacate the verdict without prejudice. And if they do so without prejudice, that means that Patsy Austin Gatson, where the original jurisdiction is, would have a certain amount of time to decide whether or not she wanted to bring the charges and have a new trial against Mike. They could also say we vacate with prejudice, which means you made your case, the man's not guilty, he's exonerated, you get to go home. Mm-hmm. That's what we want to happen. And I have to say, I do believe there is a good potential for that outcome. I think that the case is very, very strong. I think everybody listening and everybody who's been following and listening to the podcast, they know that this case makes no sense against Michael Chappell. Right. And there is, actual evidence of his innocence. And then that gets to my silver bullet. If I can continue just for a second, Sean, the silver bullet is this. The final grounds that the attorney included in the habeas is essentially the manifest injustice exception. And what that says is if the defendant can make a credible claim of innocence, then all of the previous procedural bars and technicalities and all of that goes away, and all of the evidence is considered and all of the evidence comes in. And if that happens, we're talking about everything. We're talking about the roads. We're talking about the guns that were destroyed out of protocol. We're talking about the gun that Sean was just talking about that, couldn't be tied to Chappell, so the jury never saw it. We're talking about the firemen and their testimony gets to come back in. Everything gets to come back in. And I believe if that happens, it's over.
Right.
And so
Well,
there are a lot of things that could happen. There are a lot of things that should happen. That is what I believe, we're working for, and I believe will happen.
two quick things that are pertinent. One, what is the time frame that that they have to respond, and where is the location of this initial response? What county, what court system is all of this going through?
Well, for the initial filing, they have 90 days. And Henry, again, I mean, I'm pointing this stuff to you because not because I don't know some of this stuff, but I think you're a lot more dialed in because you've been working much more closely with Mike's attorneys. But we talked about this earlier today, but I think we're going to have a fairly good idea of which way the wind is going to blow with this within 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and so he's exactly right. They essentially have 90 days for the preliminary hearing, but I think we will have a hearing scheduled. And in fact, Billy already has a good idea of when that hearing is probably going to occur, and I think it's early July if I remember correctly. And then at that point we will know that we have enough information to move forward to the full habeas, and then I think there's like 90 days to put on the trial.
Now, but that's down by Ludowici, right?
Yes, this is all in Ludowici, in Long County. The habeas is based on where Mike is. Now, if Mike was paroled, then it would move to the county of his residence, which is still not Gwinnett County, thankfully. The only way it makes its way back to Gwinnett County is if it's ordered for a new trial. That's if they vacate the sentence in order for a new trial.
Okay. Now I do have something for you, Sean. This is a little bit off topic, but one of our guests would like to know, did you ever think you would get so involved with one of your podcasts?
I never thought I'd be doing podcasts, period.
But you're so good at it.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think about it that way. This podcast, Henry, I don't remember when the final episode aired, but it's been going on a year, maybe 9 months, 6.
No,
8 months,
I think we started August 1st was the first episode, and I think it was 13
it's
weeks.
Been 6 months or something. But I mean, Henry and I probably talk 3 or 4 times a week, if not more, about Mike and about this case and about, the investigation has continued. And that's not ever a conscious thought of mine as to, well, I'm on another project now, or this is, this isn't relevant or whatever. I mean, so I'm involved. I've been involved for a long time, even when I was trying to make my own decision about whether or not I felt Mike was innocent or not. So I don't know. I don't know if that's a real answer to what you were asking, but I think I get involved in all of them because I don't tell stories that I don't care about.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good. I mean, that's
one of the Facebook users said, "Sean, it's your calling." I know you're extremely talented musically and in other ways, but I have to agree, you are. I've said this, and I know I'm biased, but I think you're the best podcaster on the planet. So that's just me.
You are biased, Henry, but thank you.
I freely admit it.
Yeah.
So, go ahead, Sean.
No, I've heard that. Thank you, by the way, whoever said that. It's your calling. I've heard that before, that little wink, wink joke.
All right. So both of you gentlemen have done a wonderful job proving Mike's innocence. Now, what about proving Danny Porter and the rest of the gang's guilt? At what point do we get to pull them up by their britches?
Well, I'm going to take this. I think they're one and the same. I think by proving Mike's innocence, you've proven everything else that we've pointed out. I think Sean is so modest. Boy, you don't know me. I got you fooled. No, I think they're one and the same. I think if you've proven Mike is innocent, the way that this case came together, the way that he was convicted, the way that the evidence was mishandled, and so on and so forth, you prove that all these other people acted, as Henry loves to say, nefariously. So I mean, as far as pulling them up and putting them, I think if Mike is exonerated, the state has to look at, well, what really happened here then, and who is really responsible for this, and God willing, some action will be taken in that, at least having people answer for
Right.
this,
Right.
because you've taken a man, God's sakes, man, you've taken 30 years of somebody's life, and I'm 42 years old. I just put that in terms. Obviously, Mike's older than that, and Henry's much older. But I just think about 30 years of my life. If I lost all the memories, all the good and the bad times, all the experiences I've had, the traveling I've done, the people I've met, the memories that I have, if I took 30 years of that away, that's how I think about Mike's life and the situation that he's been, that's gone.
Yeah.
So I hope not only that Mike is out of prison, but I hope the people that are responsible for putting them there are held accountable in a big way.
Well, I'm going to throw this back at you too, because I know that we've been kind of discussing this, but based on next steps and all that's going to be required, I mean, it's going to cost us a pretty penny. How are we going to go about doing that to make sure that we can continue to fund Mike's defense?
Henry,
I was deferring to you. Give me that question again, Tammy. I'm sorry.
He was deferring me because he didn't hear the question.
Well, the fact that we've got so much going on here, and we could be potentially going through a whole new trial with witnesses, depositions, all of the information. It doesn't go free, and it's our group, Mike's family, Mike's friends, Mike's supporters, people in the chapel group here. We are the ones trying to fund his defense, and it can't just be a couple of us, because unless one really nice person says, I want to take care of it. And of course, we did learn through Erin Olson, who was once married to Mike's brother, how she pled her case, and how her daughter Ashley came to her at 10 years old and said, Mom, what is the death penalty? And it just about destroyed her. And she came to her now as an adult and said, I would like to borrow $100,000 to get my uncle out of jail. Well, of course, she knows that there's no way her daughter can pay that back. Have the discussion with her now husband, and he so graciously has decided that, yes, we're going to help. But it can't be that one person. It can't be a couple of us, because as you can see, a case like this, the cost just grows and grows and grows. What are some suggestions on how we can get this together, how we can really help everybody to understand that it's a group effort here?
Well, I do want Sean to answer this, but I want to say a couple of quick things first. First of all, this group has been extremely generous, and we have raised the money to start this process. In fact, the third installment to the attorney is about to go out. I got the invoice yesterday, and we do have the funds to cover that. But there is a long way to go. There's I mean, we're probably still six or 8 months worth of court action. As you mentioned, we've got depositions. There's other legal expenses and other things that, are having to be put together, experts and different things. And all of that costs money. And Sean knows this. Sean got a couple of experts doing things for the podcast. And that stuff doesn't come cheap. That stuff doesn't come free. And so I want to first thank everybody who has donated, who has, supported us, who has shared this mission. And we appreciate everything you've done. And we want you guys to keep doing it. We've come a long way, but we've got a long way to go. Sean.
Well, yeah. What do you add to that? I always, for me, I've said this to someone the other day, in some contract negotiations, and I said, if I was talking to my attorney, who's expensive too, and I said, if it were up to me, I'd do everything for free because I hate asking for money. I think most people are that way. But as Henry said, I mean, and most of us have never even, and I bring up my lawyer as expensive by comparison, all lawyers are expensive. And I'm only paying my attorney here and there for simple things, contracts, reading a contract, making some notes. And that is, by God, that is the complete opposite of what's happening with Mike's case. Because as I mentioned before in a little video I did a couple of days ago, just to pay an attorney to read through and get caught up to speed on this case with what's already been filed in the past 30 years, it's tens of thousands of pages. And they don't do that for free, So even here we are, this habeas has been filed, as Henry mentioned, the installments as you kind of go along, it's going to go for a while. Depositions, it is expensive to depose somebody. Tens of thousands of dollars potentially, depending on what it is and what's entailed in that. Somebody like Mr. Porter, if he was to be deposed, and I don't know that he is, but if he were to be,
it's the top one on my list.
I didn't want to say it, but I'm just saying, if and there are a lot of players in this game, so when you put them on the stand, or so to speak, it costs money. And I guess as Henry said too, and I'll thank everybody. It always amazes me doing a project like this, doing a podcast, and people get emotionally connected, and they go from something that is considered in many ways entertainment, which podcasts are. I get it. It is. But they go from being entertained or listening because they're curious about a case to actually getting involved, joining a Facebook group, telling their friends, donating money. And that, to me, just blows me away how amazing people can be. So thank you guys for doing that. But in reality, that's how this is going to happen. Like Tammy said, unless some rich person comes along with too much money and doesn't know what to do with it. It takes all of us. I've donated, Henry's donated, Tammy has, many of you. And if it's $10 here and there, or $25 or $50 or whatever it is, it
all adds up.
It all adds up. And if everybody, I think you did the math before, one of you guys, if everybody that's in that Facebook group donated $5 or 10, there's
30 grand.
Yeah. So, it just takes us all. And that's all I can say. So if you have it, whatever you can do, it's going to a good place. Fight is a 501(c)(3). Is that what it is?
Correct.
501(c), 501(c)(3). It's
yeah.
501(c)(3). Yeah. So it is official. Nobody's putting that in their pocket except for attorneys, and that's because they're doing a job. So,
well, and I want to add one thing, if I could. One very effective way that everybody can do fundraisers on the Fight page, which we can post a link. You can actually go in and create your own fundraiser, which will populate to your profile. And if you are going to, if you're going to do that fundraiser, that Facebook fundraiser, if you're thinking, hey, I want to, donate $25 to Fight, do it through your own fundraiser. So it kickstarts your fundraiser, and you'll be amazed at how many people will support you. Every one of those personal fundraisers that I've done, I've been able to raise the goal because I quickly make the goal and then I can raise it. The one that I've got active right now started out at I think it was a $500 goal. I've raised $2,000, and I've raised the goal like 3 times. I'm at $2,000 now, so I've raised the goal to 2,500. So those fundraisers are very easy to do and very effective.
I love that somebody says, skip your Starbucks this week and donate $15. That's really what it is. I mean, if you think about it, one little thing that you skip, or you just say, well, whatever, I spend $5 on a coffee, I can put $5 into this. So that's what it takes. And I don't think we, want to harp on this forever. You guys have been amazing. A lot of the people that are in this, watching this video right now have probably given, but it is important because this is Mike's, as I said before, I mean, Mike is in the system now. This is real. This is extremely important. And for us to all together to come all this way, make it this far, and then fall short because, we can't afford to pay Mike's attorneys to do this.
Right.
Would be the biggest, that would be devastating to everyone.
All the time seeing people say, what can I do? I'll do anything I can to help. And that's the thing, for everybody to truly understand that we are so close, considering what has happened over all of these years, we are so close right now. And people are already asking, are we going to have a celebration party? Well, we can't do a celebration party until we get him home. So let's invest in getting him home, and then we will think about the celebration party. But this, like you said, is a man's life. And if we put ourselves in his shoes, it's easy to say, I want to do something. But when you put yourself in their shoes, it causes you to have action, to put your money where your mouth is. And so I too want to say thank you to everyone. And I want to just encourage you to donate for justice. The link is going through the comments right now. Get on there. Somebody had said, even if it's only $25, absolutely $25. You can even set it up to where you give monthly if you want to. And it could be a $10 donation, and you don't even have to think about it anymore. It's just automatically going out. Any of that helps us. And we want to see justice served. We want to take care of Mike, get him home to his family as soon as we can.
Somebody said that Porter and GCPD probably hope that we run out of money. I promise you that is the case. I think that the reason that we were able to get as far as we did without much, we've gotten pushback, since things kicked off, but we really flew under the radar because they were used to Mike not being well represented. They pulled their dirty tricks and got Walt Britt kicked off the case. And Mike has had to struggle with pro bono and appointed attorneys ever since. And no offense to any of those attorneys, but Mike just really has not had effective counsel until now. Mm-hmm. And I am quite sure that, when they first heard my name and first heard of the book, they thought, who is this idiot? And, they didn't think much of me, and that's fine. And we were able to fly under the radar, and now they're like, oh, wait a minute, we've got a real attorney coming after us with the truth. And, Danny Porter is rushing to talk to the, Gwinnett Daily Post and everybody. And he's, well, wait, let me get this story, and let me change it this way, and let me change it that way. Because the truth is 100% on our side. And the only thing they had going for them is that Mike did not have adequate representation. Now he does. And as Sean said, when he, announced the habeas, the fight has just begun. We have gotten to this point. Now we've got to push through and get to the other side. But the truth is on our side. And now so is a capable attorney.
Right. We have a viewer asking, does Michael know that this is all happening for him and the support he has on the outside? So I just want to let you know that absolutely between Henry, between Sean, Dragon Slayer, the attorney, and of course his amazing wife, Erin, Mike knows who loves him. Mike knows what's going on the outside. He knows all of the details. He has been able to hear some of the ongoings at our events, shouting at the Buford Parade for his innocence. So, yes, he does know. And Aaron even sends him some of the messages within the group at times so that he can actually hear words of encouragement from you specifically, which is great.
Well, he's also received cards and letters
Absolutely.
from a lot of you, and he really appreciates those. And I know that he's doing his best to respond to everyone, or at least everybody that writes to him, and so he appreciates that very much. And I can imagine if I was in his position, that would be the kinds of things that would get me through. Like Tammy mentioned, his wife. She's been faithfully by his side for 30 years, come what may. And
40 plus.
Well, no, they've been married for over 40 years,
Yeah.
but it's almost 30 years now that he's been incarcerated, and she has been faithfully by his side that whole time and fighting for him. And that says a lot about both of them. And it's hard to imagine that a lot of people would still be able to maintain, the fight and maintain the enthusiasm and just still be here after this long and after this many disappointments. But like Sean said in the podcast, they're not giving up. In fact, I think Aaron said it in the podcast. Hey, this is our name. This is our legacy. This is our family. These are our children. So yeah, we're going to fight.
Right. Well, we're going to, I'm going to send it back to you, Sean, in closing. Do you have an update for us on a part 2, perhaps, of In the Land of Lies, or are we wait until we have our big rah-rah and he's out?
I don't know.
I did not put her up to that, Sean.
Something tells me. That might be your wife there writing that. I don't know is the answer. Obviously, we want to do, for me, I only want to do episodes, not just to do them, not just to get downloads, but when there's something real to tell. And I think obviously habeas is a big deal, but I think that the time it takes to put these episodes and these things together, for me anyway, I feel like we're going to know something more. And so I kind of feel like I want to wait a little bit and just sort of see what's happening.
Yeah. Sounds good.
But trust me, when the time is right, of course I want to do more and be able to let everyone know that has heard the podcast and gets that update that there's a new episode and here's what has happened because of all the amazing people that have listened to this project and shared it and talked about it and donated and all the amazing things that you guys have done.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, Henry, you have anything left to say before we let these fine people go?
Just to reiterate what I said a few minutes ago, you guys are amazing. We appreciate everything that everybody has done and is continuing to do. Sean Kipe is the best podcaster on the planet. Tammy, you're awesome. Everybody associated with the Michael Chappell is Innocent Project, I appreciate you from the bottom of my heart, and we got to keep going. We got to get this man home, and I do believe that 2023 is the year. So let's do it.
And I just want to say one more thing on to the back of that, Henry. When you guys think about this, it wasn't me, Sean, but I do love that. When you guys think about this, no matter how, if things seem bad or we talk about, oh my God, needing to keep donations coming in for the legal funds, and I don't want anybody to be discouraged. It is absolutely mind-blowing when you step back and think about the fact that this started as Henry looking into this story, researching on his own dime, his own time, and wrote a book and hounded me, and from a podcast, even to the point of a podcast, now there's people all over the world who know Mike's story and are standing behind Mike. And it's, 11 Alive, Fox affiliate stations picking it up. It was picked up by MSN.com about Mike's petition filing. I believe there's a press release that's going to be coming out soon on the Cumulus Network in Westwood One. So this isn't something that is just us in this group or us on this call that are going, let's get this done. Things are really happening. No, things really are happening. And I just, it makes me very proud to be a part of this. And I know Henry and Tammy and all you guys feel the same, but this is something that is spread far and wide, and it's going to continue to, it's everybody be proud of that you're a part of that, and I think you guys all are.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sean.
Well, thank you both for joining me tonight. It has been a pleasure getting to speak to you both again and hearing all of this information. I know that everybody is feeling good about it as well, that they've gotten what they needed for the night. And until next time, everyone have a great evening.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thank you, guys.